Hey there. Welcome and thanks for jumping back in for another video. Um, in the last video, we really talked from a super high level about, what Sage Intacct is and some of the benefits for companies coming over from some of those older, smaller solutions. So today we'll be focusing in on the project manager and construction perspective. And for the agenda, we'll first dive into dashboards in a little more depth. But then we're going to jump out into the jobs area of the system and into some of the more construction specific functionality. Now, like we spoke about in the last video, dashboards within Intacct can be customized to entities, locations, departments, or even individual users. With that in mind, we can customize a dashboard to an individual project manager and custom tailor it to include all the most valuable reports and only include information or projects pertinent to that project manager. Now, with older systems, typically decisions are made in a reactive manner, given reporting is retrospective and generally rather static. So within Intacct, all of the reports that we're looking at on this dashboard are pulling in real-time information that can be modified and tweaked to present the information most valuable to your users. So once we have these dashboards designed, project managers or staff can come in and do their own research. And I'll take this report here as an example. We've dubbed this our project performance report, and it's really a pretty typical report for a GC and overall pretty simple. But what I can do is with anywhere we see a blue hyperlink, I can drill all the way into source transactions. And so as an example, I've selected this hyperlink here with my commitments column, and I can then within a few clicks, get all the way down into my subledgers and into my original POs and subcontracts. So from this page, I can see my original coding, any invoices that have come in against that PO or subcontract, as well as look at the user and approval history for this commitment. Now, as I come back into our dashboard here, I'll just quickly pull up our report writer to show how easy it is to tweak or modify these reports. To do that, I'll click on this pencil icon here. And from here, I'll just show a couple of sections so you can get a better feel of just how intuitive it is. Here within our rows, as we saw in the dashboard, we've selected to look at our open projects. From here, I can set my level of detail. If maybe I want to look at certain things at summary level versus detail level. I can move into my column section here. Here we can see that we can set up our column type, which budget it is we want to pull in. Maybe it's our expected cost to complete or at completion. And then we can expand these columns by other dimensions if we want to. Now, while traditionally report writing in older systems is static and requires really an enormous amount of work, Intacct has really given us the ability to flip and pivot and present our data however it is that our users need to see it. Now, moving out into the construction specific functionality that makes this Sage Intacct for construction, there's a lot within Sage Intacct construction that makes it construction specific, such as vendor compliance and retainage management. But given this video is a little more focused on project managers, our focus today will be more on the purchasing and jobs modules. So first things first, I'm going to come into purchasing. So at a glance, we can pretty quickly see a number of areas that we can jump into. This all tab is really where users would be living. And it'll quickly just show us a screen on the back end, really within the configuration that I think works well to show these workflows and how they operate and flow from one step to the next. And so here you can see where it's moving from purchase requisition to PO to invoice. And then we have our subcontract workflows down below. Now, coming back into our all tab, we can see those different workflow steps here for users to interact with. And so as a project manager in the context of purchasing, we'd likely be living more in the approval process, which we can see here. Now within Intacct, there are purchasing, routing, and approvals that can be set up a number of different ways and can have multiple steps to accommodate the needs of the organization and how it is that you guys are doing these things. But I'll quickly jump into one of our subcontracts here. So as we can see at the top level, we have some pretty typical header level information that includes things such as vendor, project, and terms. But as we come down, we really start to see, some of our dimensions come out and the level of granularity that we can enter some of these things. And so we can see things such as our job related dimensions, as well as other dimensions here, and the additional info tab below. And this is truly where that extra granularity is being captured so that we can bring it into our reporting. Now, something I do like to note here is the spend insight button, and this lives within the various cost and purchasing areas of the system. But what it's doing is in real time, as the user is coding to a job, especially during our buyout phase, Spend Insight is validating against our established budget for that job all the way down to the cost type. And we can configure this one of two ways. We can configure it, one, to essentially just throw a flag for us, indicating to the user that based on what they coded, if it's over budget, would let them know, and they could click submit again to proceed. The second option that we have is to put a full stop on that transaction to the point where the user needs to save that document or transaction down in a draft form until we can get a revision pushed through to that budget. And so the result of this being, instead of only being able to retrospectively look back and try to figure out where it is we blew budget, we can put up those guardrails on the front end against some of those overages. Now, just like we spoke about when we were within the dashboards, we can do a lot of research straight from this screen. Here, I can come into my change orders, see any that were associated with the subcontract. If I come to my history tab here, I can see any and all invoices that have come in against the subcontract and even see if that invoice has been paid, all by clicking on that blue hyperlink. And I can see I can pull up my payment number here. Maybe that's a check or an ACH that we generated. Now that we've covered purchasing, let's jump into the jobs module. So now as we come in, as I mentioned in the last video, in many cases, both within the purchasing module we touched on, as well as our jobs module here, clients are using project management software that directly integrates, such as Red Team or Procore or Sage Construction Management, that would feed directly into this module. But let's just talk about it from a high level. So as I jump into the jobs listing here, we can see all of our active jobs listed. And we can pretty quickly see that we can define relationships and hierarchies so that we can then break out sub jobs or phases or units, really however granular it is that the organization wants to break out some of these things and track revenues and costs. So with that, we can then analyze and report on these individual sub jobs or phases, or we can roll all of that up and look at it from the overall parent job perspective. And then similarly with invoicing, we could generate those invoices out at the sub job level, or we could roll it all up and invoice out at the parent level. Now, one area I do like to show as we come into the individual job record is this commitments tab. So from here, a project manager can get a full summary view of their entire buyout for that job that breaks down how much has been invoiced all the way to actual cash out the door on those individual commitments. And then just like everywhere else within the system, when we see these blue hyperlinks, I could drill in, do any of the research required for those individual transactions, on the cost side of this project. So the last thing I'll show today is in regards to invoice generation. So within Sage Intacct for construction, we can bill out lump sum and progress billing, as well as T&M. So for lump sum, as you'd expect, we jump into this area here. I'm going to come to generate invoices. I'm going to select my project contract and my bill through date. As we come in, I can see some higher level header information, but as I come down and dictate our percent complete on each of these contract lines, alternatively, I could enter in dollar amounts and the reverse happens and it auto calculates our percent complete for that line. I'm just going to pull one up that we already have done. But as you can see, our output is kind of a standard AIA style format. Now let's back out and look at our T&M billings really quickly. The interface and screens look virtually the same. But as we scroll down, we can now see all of our costs coming in from various areas of the system. So from purchasing down, you can see AP to labor and employee expenses, all the way to journal entries if we're allowing for that. And then just like everywhere else, I could easily pull up our source transaction for review as I'm doing here. come back. We can pull up our predefined rate tables that drive how much it is that we're billing or marking up each of our costs or labor types. Just like you would expect, the user would essentially come in and select or deselect what it is that we need to have here and generate our invoice. Now that really concludes what I wanted to cover for today's project manager section. Obviously this was really high level and there's more that we could dig into. But as I said, one of the advantages and strengths of Intacct is really also some of those pre-built integrations to industry-leading project management and operation softwares that can then seamlessly feed that information into Intacct and really eliminate a lot of those manual processes and double entry that tend to bog down teams on some of those older solutions. As always, thanks for watching. And if you have any questions over anything we've gone over today, or really anything having to do with Sage Intacct, don't hesitate to reach out to the team here at Zape.